protest outside of AEW's residency venue. Is WWE interested in a Vince McMahon return? My review of AEW Dynamite and more. I'm Luke Owen and this is the WrestleTalk News.
Support WrestleTalk!
Give us a subscribe.
Will Ospreay ended his triumphant return to UK wrestling by having his neck absolutely smashed in by the Death Riders in the closing moments of AEW's Forbidden Door this past Sunday. We'll have more on his injury and surgery in a moment, but he appears to still be the same old cheeky chappy Billy Goat that he always has been, despite the brutal attack, as his partner Alex Windsor celebrated her weekend by posting a photo of herself from Forbidden Door with the caption, "Forbidden Door," only for Will to pop in and reply, "I'll enter your Forbidden Door anytime." Sir, this is a Denny's. But, actually, I will make a quick note of that chat line. I might try that one on the wife later. It was reported ahead of Forbidden Door that Will was dealing with serious neck issues, and the lights-out cage match would be his last match for a while. It was also reported that he'll likely need surgery, which likely means he won't be around for at least a year, maybe longer. In a new report, however, Sean Rossap of Fightful Select notes while Ospreay has certainly indicated he needs surgery and talked about his surgeon and that he might need surgery, he has not outright stated that he's getting surgery. Even when talent and staff I've talked to have asked, I don't think he's outright said it. SRS adds that this doesn't mean Will isn't going to get surgery, but notes being cleared to wrestle in that cage match isn't usually something that happens with that type of injury. Swerve Strickland also did an injury angle at Forbidden Door when he was taken out by Kazuchika Okada and a returning Wardlow. Swerve posted to social media yesterday that he has successfully undergone surgery to repair a torn meniscus. We wish him a speedy recovery. And Will isn't the only one dealing with neck issues, as it was revealed earlier this year that Kevin Owens needed to get neck surgery, which kept him off the WrestleMania 41 card. He has since been in attendance for the 2025 Coke Zero Sugar 400 NASCAR event, a name that rolls right off the tongue, where he said, "I needed neck fusion." It was very successful going into it because we weren't really sure how severe the fusion was going to be, how many levels, all this stuff. Thankfully, ended up only being one level, which is the best case scenario for something like this. He added that the next steps is now simply recovery and to see if the surgery takes. When asked about returning to the ring, he said some guys had success, some guys didn't. Fingers crossed I can come back to wrestling in the next year. Really don't know though, but yeah, my goal is to come back, so hopefully that's what happens. Leave your comment down below wishing a speedy recovery to Kevin Owens. Oddly though, the bigger talking point out of the NASCAR appearance was less Kevin's comments, but his actual appearance, with many saying that he'd lost a lot of weight, or as this Reddit user said, he'd slimmed down a considerable amount. It was clearly enough for Owens himself to pop up on Twitter and let everyone know, guys, stop panicking, I'm still fat. Everyone needs to calm down. But while we're here talking about Will Ospreay, Kevin Owens, and Swerve Strickland returns, there is another return on the lips of wrestling fans, Vince McMahon. Vince McMahon celebrated his 80th birthday recently, which was intended to be a private event. However, photos of the party got leaked online, which revealed several members of the current WWE roster and backstage staff were in attendance, including Sheamus, Drew McIntyre, The Miz, Maurice Undertaker, and John Cena. Titus O'Neil was also there, as was Jerry Lawler. There were other WWE stars in attendance reportedly, but their names have not been made public. Triple H, Stephanie McMahon, and Nick Khan were not at the party, according to Fightful Select, and there was no official WWE involvement. Bryan Danielson was also not in attendance. Fightful Select are also reporting that the party would not have been heard about had the photos not got leaked online because it was kept so private. In fact, they report that Jerry Lawler posted a photo of himself, Drew, Sheamus, Miz, Maurice, and Titus, and was asked to delete it from social media, which he did. One talent that Fightful spoke to said there was a moral conflict in going, but didn't elaborate on why they decided to attend. Fightful add WWE talent that we spoke to weren't surprised that there were so many present WWE talent here. One who spent a lot of time working with McMahon told Fightful, a lot of people here still feel like they owe Vince something, even though he made his money back on them tenfold. They also add that some talent who didn't go were waiting to see what happened with the Janelle Grant lawsuit before deciding whether they should sever ties with Vince. They add there were talents that asked if they could go or should attend and were told by a WWE higher up that that was their business. Fightful also writes, of those who didn't attend that we spoke to, the consensus was that if they were accused of doing the things McMahon was, he would have fired them and never spoken to them again. John Cena is perhaps the least surprising name on the list of guests, as he's been so vocal in his defense of Vince since the lawsuit and has even been spotted having dinner with him on several occasions. Fightful also report that JBL and Bruce Pritchard have been in regular contact with Vince. One person told Fightful that Lawler is ride or die with Vince McMahon. However, for some of the guests who went, it's the first time they've seen him in person since the infamous Raw after Mania 39, where McMahon tore up the script shortly before the show went live. Fightful also report that those who did attend felt that Vince McMahon very much looked like he was 80 years old. Fightful write McMahon seemed more frail, walked slower, and looked his age in a manner that he hadn't in decades before leaving WWE. In the wake of Brock Lesnar returning at SummerSlam, there were discussions online about a potential Vince McMahon return. The difference between the two, though, is that Vince McMahon is the subject of the Janelle Grant lawsuit, while Brock Lesnar is only named in the amended version of the lawsuit after being alluded to in the first version. However, Fightful write, there has been no talk of Vince McMahon returning to WWE in any capacity at this point. One higher-up told Fightful that there is no desire for Vince to come back, certainly not in a creative role. But it's Thursday, you know what that means. It's time for my review of AEW Dynamite, which took place from the famous ECW Arena, aka the 2300 Arena. But before the review, though, there were reports before the show of protests by union workers who claim the 2300 Arena are failing to meet area standards by paying substandard wages and benefits, noting in a longer Facebook post that the union's collective bargain rate is $54.40 an hour, which they claim the 2300 Arena are not paying their stagehands. AEW told Post Wrestling that this is an issue between the venue and the union and nothing to do with them, while the 2300 Arena CEO emailed Post Wrestling to say our workers are being paid the fair wage they claim is not being paid. Mike Johnson of PW Insider agrees that this isn't an issue between the union and AEW and reports the union are using All Elite Wrestling shows to apply pressure to the 2300 Arena. Of course, wrestling fans are being wrestling fans. WWE fans are blasting AEW fans for AEW using a building given their stance on workers' rights, while AEW fans are blasting WWE fans because WWE ran the 2300 Arena last fall and they didn't seem to have an issue with it then. And, collectively, no one sees the irony in that all the wrestlers on these shows are not part of a union and are all still considered independent contractors. Anyway, FTR opened the show to have a pop at Paul Turner for his bad officiating at Forbidden Door. Lads, if we're going to start having a go at all the bad refereeing on every AEW show, we're not going to get anything else done. But Paul Turner refused to overturn his decision. Adam Copeland came out to attack FTR, but he wasn't backed up by Christian despite looking over his shoulder, looking for his tag partner. Turns out it was all a ruse as Cage took out Stoke in the ring and CNC Music Factory brawled with FTR before challenging them to a match at All Out. Hilariously, Christian is keeping his dead dad gimmick, but it's now somehow turned into a babyface pop. Wrestling really is weird. Darby Allin made some art out of the blood from his ear when Mox stabbed him with some scissors, a hell of a sentence to write on paper and say out loud on a YouTube video. He challenged him to a match at All Out. Mox then had a fantastic match with Daniel Garcia, where Danny had some lovely tributes to Nigel McGuinness before he inevitably turns on him, and got some great near falls with the Dragon Tamer and a pile driver. He survived a DDT on the steps and the count-out spot, but Mox got a roll-up win. An awesome match that did way more for Garcia than his entire TNT Championship run did, and it really felt like Mox was impressed to the idea of recruiting him into the group the way that the Blackpool Combat Club used to. Wheeler Yuta didn't seem too much into that idea, of course, and he turned down Darby's all-out challenge on behalf of Mox. He was back out to the ring after the break to get some local heat before he was beaten down by a returning Hook and his brand new music in the same building that made his dad famous. It's since come out that after the show went off the air, AEW honored Taz and will hang his name in the building for the rest of the residency. MJF cut a promo on Hangman Page saying that he will sign the contract eventually, only this time it won't just be for a match, but also for Hangman's soul. And Chris Statlander teamed with Harley Cameron to beat Megan Bayne and Penelope Ford. Stat and Bayne brawled after the match and Willow Nightingale ran out for a tense save. Mercedes Moné cut a promo about looking to win a 10th title and beat Ultimo Dragon's record. What about Nina Samuel's record though? And Mark Briscoe revealed he's got a new baby and will be back next week to face Kyle Fletcher for the TNT Championship. Your weekly Part A match saw Jet Speed team with Bro Dida to take on the Don Callis family of Hechicero, Josh Alexander, Konosuke Takeshita and Kazuchika Okada, and blimey, that's a good lineup. This was built around down the tensions between Okada and Takeshita, but Alexander got the win for his team. Likely because Hangman Page came out to cut a promo and Don Callis, himself no stranger to the ECW arena, said that a member of the family will be coming for his title next. Hangman was beaten down by Rocky Romero, Alexander, Lance Archer, and Hechicero before Jet Speed ran in for the save, and Kenny by God Omega ran in to even the odds. One of the best teams in AEW history then hit their buckshot V-trigger combo to take out Archer and stand tall. If I was a betting man, I'd say it'll be Takeshita next for the title at All Out, which will then spin off into a Takeshita and Okada over the Unified Championship, and then Kenny can face Page with full gear. They later announced that Hangman and Omega will team up with Jet Speed to take on the Don Callis family and the Young Bucks. Yep, Hangman and Omega versus the Bucks next week. The Ops retained their trios titles over Ricochet and the Gates of Agony via interference from MVP. The Hurt Syndicate brawled with them afterwards, and the main event saw Darby Allin beat Claudio Castagnoli in a brilliant Falls Count Anywhere match. This was wild. Darby was shopping carted like he was Bam Margera in 1999. He coffin dropped off a post that was way high in the air, and Claudio tossed him like he was Spike Dudley from the ring into the commentary table. It was awesome. I Am the Table meant that Claudio had to hit Darby into one even harder the second time, but Darby hit a series of coffin drops for the win. The Death Riders beat him down afterwards, but Gabe Kidd failed, which means that Darby Allin escaped. A really fun edition of AEW Dynamite with 3 superb matches and a great reunion of Page and Omega. Now, somebody complained to Ollie at Forbidden Door that I don't do number ratings for reviews anymore because, honestly, I don't really believe in them, and even more honestly, people just complain whatever score I give. So I'm going to introduce the greater/lesser than system and tell you, just in my opinion, that this week's Dynamite was greater than last week's Dynamite. Don't know if I did that the right way around, actually. If you didn't go yesterday, go please check out our podcast review of the Snyder Cut of Justice League over on Cutscene, which Ollie really liked. The movie, not the review, although I think he liked the review as well.